A father's faith is shattered when his teenage daughter reveals she was assaulted at a church camp by the pastor's son, and when the church prioritizes reputation over justice, he makes a decision that will force an entire congregation to witness the truth they tried to bury. I thought the worst thing that could happen to my daughter was losing her mother. I was wrong. I thought the worst thing that could happen to my daughter was losing her mother. I was wrong. It was a Tuesday night, late August, the kind of evening where the heat clings to your skin even after the sun goes down. I was sitting at the kitchen table, reviewing code for a project I didn't care about, listening to the cicadas outside. Emma had been at the church youth camp for 3 days. She'd called me the night before, laughing about something one of her friends said during worship. She sounded happy, safe. Then my phone rang. The number was unfamiliar. I almost didn't pick up, but something in my gut told me to answer. "Mr. Brennan?" The voice on the other end was shaky, young. "This is Tyler, one of the counselors at Camp Harvest Ridge. There's been an incident involving your daughter. She's at St. Mary's Hospital in Franklin. You need to come right away." I don't remember the drive. I don't remember grabbing my keys or locking. All I remember is the word incident echoing in my head and the feeling that my world was about to collapse. When I got to the hospital, I was standing in the waiting room, hands shoved in his pockets, looking anywhere but at me. I didn't stop to ask. I needed to see her. She was in room 217. The door was half open. I stepped inside and saw her. Emma, my little girl, 16 years old, sitting on a hospital bed with her arm in a sling, bruises blooming across her neck and wrists like dark flowers. But it wasn't the injuries that broke me. It was her eyes. They were empty, hollow, like someone had reached inside and taken something she'd never get back. "Emma, sweetheart, what happened?" She didn't answer right. She just stared at the wall, tears streaming down her face. "It was him, Dad," Lee said, her voice so small I almost didn't hear it. Kyle Thorne, the pastor's." I felt the floor shift under me. "He pushed me," her voice breaking. "I told him to stop. I tried to fight back, but he wouldn't listen. And after it was over, he looked at the bruises on my arms and she choked on those. He laughed. I wanted to say something. I wanted to tell her it would be okay, that I'd fix this, that I'd protect her. But all I could do was hold her. And in that moment, everything I believed, my church, my community, it all felt like, because the boy who hurt my daughter wasn't some. He was the son of the man who stood at the pulpit every Sunday and preached about grace, forgiveness, and doing what's right. And I knew deep down that this was just the beginning. If you were in David's shoes, what would you do? Drop a comment below. And if you want to see what happens next, hit that subscribe button, because this story is just getting started. I thought the church would protect my daughter. Instead, they asked me to protect her attacker. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in the hospital room, watching Emma breathe, her face pale against the pillow. Every time she shifted in her sleep, I saw the bruises. Every time she whimpered, I felt my chest tighten. By morning, I'd made a decision. I was going to talk to Pastor Thorne, not because I wanted his permission, not because I thought he could fix it, but because I believed deep down that he would do the right thing, that he'd stand with us, that he'd hold his son accountable. I was wrong. I arrived at the church just before 10. The parking lot was empty except for the pastor's black SUV. The building was quiet, peaceful, the kind of place that's supposed to feel safe. But as I walked through those doors, all I felt was dread. The secretary, Mrs. Callahan, looked up from her desk with a smile that faded the moment she saw my face. "David," "Is everything okay?" "I need to see Pastor Thorne." She hesitated, glancing at the closed door behind her. "He's preparing for a meeting. Can I schedule you for now?" "It can't wait." She nodded slowly and picked up the phone. A moment later, the door opened, and there he was, Pastor Gregory Thorne, the man who'd baptized Emma when she was 8, the man who'd prayed over my wife's casket, the man I'd trusted with my faith, my family, my life. "David," he said warmly, extending a hand. Come in. What's going on?" I didn't take his hand. I walked past him into the office and stood in the center of the room, arms crossed. "Pastor, I need to talk to you about what happened at the camp." His smile faltered. "Of course. How's Emma doing? I heard there was some kind of accident." "It wasn't an accident." He blinked. "I'm sorry? Your son assaulted my daughter." The words hung in the air like a grenade. For a moment he just stared at me, his mouth slightly open, as if I'd spoken a foreign language. "David," "that's a very serious accusation." "It's not an accusation. It's the truth. She told me everything. Kyle pushed her. He hurt her. And when he saw the bruises, he laughed." Pastor Thorne's expression shifted. The warmth drained from his face, replaced by something colder. "Calculating. I spoke to Kyle this morning," he said, his voice steady. "He told me there was some roughhousing by the lake. Kids being kids. Things got a little out of hand, but—" "A little out of hand?" I stepped closer. "She's in the hospital, Pastor. She has bruises on her neck, her wrists. She's terrified. I'm not saying it wasn't unfortunate," raising his hands in a placating gesture. "But my son is not a violent person. Maybe Emma misunderstood what happened. Maybe she—" "Don't." His voice was low, dangerous. "Don't you dare blame her." He sighed, rubbing his temples. "David, I understand you're upset. Any father would be. But we need to be careful here. If we blow this out of proportion, if we involve the police, it could ruin Kyle's life. He's got college applications, a scholarship to Vanderbilt. He's a good kid who made a mistake. And what about Emma? What about her life? But we have to think about the bigger picture. The testimony of this becomes public. It'll hurt everyone. We don't want scandal." I stared at him, my hands shaking. "You're asking me to stay silent." "I'm asking you to pray," he said, "to wait, to let us handle this internally. God will bring justice in His time. God isn't the one who hurt my daughter." He looked at me for a long moment, his jaw tight. Then he leaned back in his chair and folded his hands. "David," he said quietly, "I'm not going to let you destroy my son's future over a teenage misunderstanding." And just like that, I understood. This wasn't about truth. It wasn't about justice. It was about protection, not for Emma, for Kyle, for the church's image, for the pastor's reputation. I turned and walked out without it, because there was nothing left to say. The church had made its choice, and so had I. Have you ever trusted someone who let you down when it mattered most? Drop your thoughts in the comments. And if you want to see how David fights back, hit that like button and subscribe. This story is about to get intense. They say the truth will set you free. But first, you have to find it. After I left Pastor Thorne's office, I sat in my truck for 20 minutes, hands gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles went white. I wanted to scream. I wanted to drive straight to Kyle's house and drag him out by his collar, but I didn't, because anger without evidence is just noise. And I needed more than noise. I needed proof. That's when I remembered something Emma had said in the hospital. The camp had security cameras, not everywhere, but near the main areas, the lodge, the dining hall, and the lake. The lake. I drove out to Camp Harvest Ridge the next day. The place was mostly deserted. A few stragglers packing up, a couple of staff members sweeping cabins. The air smelled like pine and charcoal from old campfires. It should have felt peaceful, but all I found Sarah at the front desk. She was young, maybe 20, with kind eyes that looked too tired for her. When I told her what I needed, she went pale. "I don't think I can give you that." "Then find someone who can." She made a call. 20 minutes later, Mr. Hartley showed up, the camp director, a man in his 50s with gray hair and the kind of face that's used to saying no. "Mr. Brennan," he said, shaking my hand weakly, "I heard about Emma. I'm very sorry. I need to see the security footage from Saturday night." His jaw tightened. "I understand why you'd want that, but the footage is part of an internal review. The church leadership has advised me not to release anything without legal counsel present." "Legal counsel?" I stepped closer. "My daughter is the victim here. She has a right to see what happened to her. I'm not saying she doesn't. But this is a delicate situation. We have to follow protocol." "Protocol?" My voice rose. "Kyle Thorne assaulted my daughter. And you're worried about protocol?" He looked away. "I don't want to be in the middle of this. You already are, I said. You can either help me, or you can explain to a judge why you obstructed justice. He stared at me for a long time. Then he sighed, pulled a set of keys from his pocket, and nodded toward the back of the lodge. Follow me. The office was small, cramped. A desk covered in paperwork, a dusty computer monitor, and a boxy DVR system with 4 channels. Hartley sat down, clicked through the menu, and pulled up Saturday Night. Camera 3 covers the lake area. He hit play. At first it was just kids milling around, laughing, splashing in the water. Then I saw her, Emma, sitting on a rock by the shore, talking to a friend. She looked happy, relaxed. Then Kyle appeared. He walked up to her casually, said something. She shook her head. He smiled, friendly smile. A predatory one. He reached for her arm. She pulled away. He grabbed harder. My stomach turned. She tried to stand. He pushed her back down. She said something. I couldn't hear it, but I could see the fear in her face. He leaned in close, laughing. She shoved him. He shoved back harder. She stumbled, fell. He stood over her, still smiling, and then he walked away, like it was nothing. I watched it 3 times. Each time I felt something inside me break. I need a copy of this. Barely steady. Hartley hesitated. I can't just... Yes, I said, turning to face. You can, because if you don't, I will make sure everyone knows you had proof and did nothing. He looked at me, then at the screen. Finally, he pulled out a USB drive, copied the file, and handed it to me. This is going to destroy people, he said quietly. It already has, I replied. I walked out of that office with the drive in my pocket, feeling the weight of it like a loaded gun. I had the truth now, undeniable, irrefutable, but having the truth and knowing what to do with it are 2 very different things, because if I went to the police it would take weeks, maybe months. And in the meantime, Kyle would walk free. The church would close ranks. Emma would be questioned, doubted, blamed. But there was another option, one that terrified me, one that went against everything I'd been taught about forgiveness and turning the other cheek. I could make sure everyone saw what I saw. I could show them who Kyle Thorne really was, not in a courtroom, not behind closed doors, but in front of the entire congregation on Sunday morning. What would you do if you had proof but no one wanted to see it? Tell me in the comments. And if you're hooked on this story, smash that subscribe button, because what happens next will change everything. Some truths are too big to whisper. They demand to be seen. I didn't sleep that night. I sat at the kitchen table with the USB drive in front of me, staring at it like it might explode. In a way it would. I'd watched the footage so many times I'd memorized every frame. Emma's fear, the way he laughed, the way she fell. I could close my eyes. Part of me wanted to do that. Let the system work. Trust that justice would come. But I knew better. I'd already seen how this played out. The pastor would spin the story. Emma would be dragged through the mud, questioned, doubted, blamed, away untouched. Maybe a slap, maybe community service, but nothing that would actually... I was drafting a text to Detective Ortiz when I heard a knock at the door. It was almost midnight. For a moment I thought about ignoring it, but something made me stand up and walk to the door. Monica Lang stood on my porch, holding a casserole dish covered in foil. I heard what happened. I brought food. We sat at the kitchen table, the casserole between us, untouched. She didn't ask me how I was doing. She didn't offer empty platitudes. She just sat there, present, like that was enough. And then she said something that changed everything. David, I need to tell you something. 3 years ago, there was another girl. Her name was Jenna. She was 16. Kyle cornered her after youth group in the parking lot. She told her parents. They went to Pastor Thorne. I looked up. What happened? Monica's face was tight, pained. He convinced them to keep it quiet, said going public would destroy Kyle's future, that it was a misunderstanding. The family stayed for a few more months, but eventually they left. Moved to Kentucky. No one talks about it. It's like it never happened. I felt something harden inside me. And Kyle? He kept going, because no one stopped him. I stared at the cat. He's done this before. Yes. And the church protected him. Yes? I looked at her. If I go to the police, the same thing will happen. The church will rally around him, they'll make Emma out to be a liar, and Kyle will walk. So what are you going to do? The footage? Sunday morning. She went Then she looked me in the eye and said, they'll hate you for it. I know. Some of them will never forgive you. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm asking for the truth to be seen. She was quiet for a long time. Then she stood up, touched my shoulder, and said, I'll be there, front row. After she left, I sat alone in the kitchen. I pulled out my Bible, the one my wife gave me years ago, pages worn and marked. I flipped to the story of Jesus in the temple, the money changers, the tables overturned, the righteous anger. I'd always thought faith meant turning the other cheek, forgiving, staying quiet. But maybe that's not faith. Maybe faith is standing up when everyone else sits down. Maybe it's protecting the innocent, even when it costs you everything. Around 2 a.m, I heard footsteps on the stairs. Emma appeared in the doorway, hair messy, eyes red. Dad? She said softly. Hey, sweetheart, can't sleep? She shook her head and walked over, her eyes landing on the paused video, Kyle's face, her body on the ground. What are you going to do with that? She asked. I looked at her, my daughter, my whole world, and I said, I'm going to make sure they see you, Emma, not as a rumor, not as a scandal, but as my daughter, as someone who deserves to be believed. Her lips trembled. They're going to be so angry. Let them be, I said. Dad, are you sure? I stood up and pulled her into a hug. She was taller now, almost my height. But in that moment she felt small again, fragile. And I knew with every fiber of my being that I was doing the right thing. I've never been more sure of anything in my life. Sunday was 2 days away. And I was ready. Would you have the courage to do what David's about to do? Drop your thoughts below. And if this story has you on the edge of your seat, hit subscribe, because Sunday morning is coming, and it's going to change everything. There are moments when silence becomes violence, and sometimes the most faithful thing you can do is make noise. Sunday morning, the day I'd been dreading, the day I'd been preparing for. I woke up at 6, made coffee, sat at the kitchen table, and stared at the USB drive. Emma was still asleep upstairs. I'd told her she didn't have to. She'd cried with relief. I got dressed slowly. Button-down shirt, jeans, no tie. I wasn't there to fit in. I was there to tear it all down. The drive to the church felt surreal. The roads were quiet. Families heading to brunch, kids on bikes. The world moving on like nothing had changed. But for me, everything had. When I pulled into the parking lot, it was already packed. Hundreds of cars, hundreds of people who had no idea what was about to happen. I sat in my truck for 5 minutes, hands on the wheel, breathing slowly. Then I saw Monica. She was standing near the entrance, scanning the lot. When she saw me, she nodded. That was all I needed. I walked in. The sanctuary was alive with warmth. The worship band was playing something soft and hopeful. People hugged, laughed, sang along. It all felt so normal, so safe. Like nothing could ever go wrong here, but I knew better. I stood in the back, near the doors, watching. Pastor Thorne was at the front, shaking hands, smiling that perfect pastoral smile. And there in the second row was Kyle, clean-cut, relaxed, scrolling through his phone like he hadn't destroyed my daughter's life a week ago. The song ended, the lights dimmed slightly. Pastor Thorne walked to the microphone. Good morning, church family, his voice warm and full of grace. And I started walking. Every step down that center aisle felt like a mile. People turned to look. Whispers spread like wildfire. I could feel their eyes on me. Confusion, curiosity. Some of them knew me. Some of them smiled, but I didn't smile. When I reached the stage, Pathorn's face changed. The warmth drained. His eyes went wide. David, he said quietly, leaning away from the mic, what are you doing? I didn't answer. I climbed the steps, walked straight to the tech booth. The operator, a kid, maybe 22, looked at me like I was insane. Play this, I said, handing him the USB drive. He hesitated. Sir, I can't just... Now. Pastor Thorne was behind me, grabbing my arm. "David, this is not the time. We can talk about this privately." I pulled free and took the microphone from the stand. "This is exactly the time," I said. The screens lit up, both sides of the stage, massive, unavoidable. And then the video played. At first, there was silence, confusion. Then I heard it, the gasps, the sharp intakes of breath. Someone screamed. A woman in the third row covered her mouth with both hands. On the screen, Kyle cornered Emma by the lake. She pulled away. He grabbed her. She fell. He laughed. I stood there, microphone in hand, and let them watch. Let them see what their church had been doing, what their pastor had asked me to bury. When the video ended, the silence was deafening. I raised the microphone. "My daughter, Emma Brennan, went to Camp Harvest Ridge last week," I said, my voice steady but raw. "She trusted she was safe. She trusted this church, and Kyle Thorne, the pastor's son, assaulted her. He hurt her. And when he saw the bruises on her body, he laughed. The sanctuary erupted. Shouts, gasps, accusations flying. Kyle stood up, face pale, trying to push through the crowd. "It wasn't like that. She's lying." Monica stood from the front row, her voice cutting through the chaos. "She's not the first, Kyle. Jenna Patterson. 3 years ago, you did this to her too." The room exploded. People turned on each other. Some rushed toward Kyle. Others turned on me, yelling that I was destroying the church. Pastor Thorne stood frozen on stage, mouth open, unable to speak. I didn't move. I stood there, microphone still in hand, and let the chaos unfold, because this was the truth. Ugly, uncomfortable, undeniable. And they couldn't look away anymore. This moment changed everything. What would you have done in David's place? Comment below, and let's talk about it. And if this story is gripping you, hit that subscribe button, because the final chapter is coming, and you won't want to miss how this ends. Justice doesn't always look like victory. Sometimes it looks like survival. The days after Sunday were the hardest. The church exploded into chaos the moment that video ended. Some people rushed toward Kyle, demanding answers. Others turned on me, shouting that I'd destroyed the church, that I was weaponizing my daughter's pain. Pastor Thorne stood frozen on stage, unable to speak. Security was called. Then the police. Kyle was escorted out, pale and silent. His father followed, no longer the confident leader who'd asked me to stay quiet. Just a broken man watching his world collapse. I left through the side door with Monica. We didn't say anything. There was nothing to say. The next few days were a blur. My phone wouldn't stop ringing. Half the calls were from reporters wanting a statement. The other half were from people I'd known for years, telling me I'd gone too far, that I'd ruined lives, that I should have handled it privately. A few called to say thank you, Monica. A couple of families who'd quietly left the church years ago. And then a letter arrived. It was from a girl named Jenna Patterson. She was 21 now, living in Kentucky. And 3 years ago, Kyle had done to her what he did to Emma. She'd told her parents. They'd gone to Pastor Thorne, and he'd convinced them to stay silent. She wrote, "Thank you for doing what no one did for me. Thank you for speaking up." I showed the letter to Emma. She cried, not because she was sad, but because she realized she wasn't alone, that her voice mattered, that speaking up could change things. A week after the incident, Detective Rachel Ortiz came to the house. She was kind but firm. Emma had to give an official statement. It would be recorded, documented, used in court. It would be painful. But Emma was ready. I waited outside the interview room, hands shaking, listening to the faint sound of her voice through the door. She was so strong, stronger than I ever gave her credit for. When she came out, her eyes were red, but she stood tall. It's done. 2 days later, Kyle was arrested. The news spread through the community like wildfire. Some people celebrated. Others mourned. A promising young man's ruined future. As if Emma's future didn't matter. The backlash was real. Our mailbox was vandalized twice. Anonymous calls in the middle of the night. Former friends crossed the street to avoid us. Even at school, Emma faced whispers, stares, judgment. But she also found allies, a group of girls who sat with her at lunch, A teacher who pulled her aside and said, "I believe you." Small acts of kindness that reminded her she wasn't alone. The trial date was set for 6 months out. 6 months of waiting. 6 months of wondering if it would all be worth it. But one night, about 3 weeks after everything happened, something shifted. Emma and I were sitting on the couch, half watching some sitcom neither of us cared about, and then she laughed. Not a forced laugh, a real one, light and genuine. I looked at her surprised. "What?" she said, smiling. "Nothing," I said. "Just, it's good to hear you laugh." She nodded. "I'm not okay yet, Dad, but I think I will be." "Me too," I said, and in that moment justice doesn't always look like victory. Sometimes it looks like survival, like getting up every day and choosing to keep going, like laughing at a dumb joke on TV even when the world feels heavy. We didn't win. Not yet. Kyle's trial was months away. The community was fractured. Some people would never forgive me for what I did. But Emma was still here, still fighting, still healing. And that was enough. This is what courage looks like. Not a perfect ending, but an honest one. If this story moved you, leave a comment sharing your thoughts. And if you believe stories like this need to be told, subscribe to the channel, because every voice matters. 6 months later, the trial happened. Kyle was found guilty. He was sentenced to 3 years in prison and mandatory counseling. Pastor Thorne never returned to ministry, Emma testified. She read her victim impact statement in front of a courtroom full of people. Her voice didn't shake. She spoke with clarity, strength, and grace. David sat in the front row, tears streaming down his face, knowing that his daughter would be okay. Not because the justice system saved her, but because she saved herself. And sometimes that's the only victory that matters. If this story impacted you, please share it. Someone out there needs to hear that their voice matters, that speaking up is worth it, and that they're not alone. Subscribe for more real stories that matter. And remember, silence protects the wrong people. Your voice can change everything.